Hi guys, it's Josh here again. Want to give a shout out to everyone who watched my previous video, and I wanted to give a new market update covering two trades of the decade. What I want to do today is we're going to look at Bitcoin, Tesla, kind of look at what some of the things that were said in my previous video and how it unfolded. And I hope that you guys find this video useful. If you watched my last video, I recorded it on September 17th, 18th time, and I tried to make the case when people were getting bearish again, when the trend on Bitcoin was changing, that September wasn't the time to reevaluate your Bitcoin thesis, that September tends to be a weak month, and many thought that this was going to be a higher high and that we were going to drop to a lower low. And in my last video, I tried to advocate for putting the technical analysis aside and focusing more on fundamental analysis. And I posed that September was actually the best time to be buying Bitcoin for the next 12 months. And conveniently, we went from about 57K to now 65K, making a higher high. I thought this would happen in October, but now we're already higher. And if you watch that video, I recommend it to buy MSTR on any dips. I made the video right here when MSTR was at 132 and now we're at 176. And that's just luck. And now I want to talk more about what can we do moving forward. Looking at Bitcoin, it looks very, very strong. But I think we still have a lot more gains, and I want to make this content different and unique to James's content, because he's already gone over a lot of the things that I want to discuss. But obviously, we've made a higher low and a higher high, so the technical structure, the trend has changed positive. But what I want to emphasize is we're still very early in this Bitcoin cycle, about 50% of the way through. Again, we are still just only 2 weeks ago recovering from being green on the TAPI model. So at these present levels, I would still consider this to be early yellow, and we haven't turned to orange, dark orange, or red. So this would support that we still have at least, in my opinion, 3 to 6 months of the cycle, if not the usual 10 to 12 months with a peak in September, October, November of 2025. I think we should be prudent and ready to take profits here, even over the next few months. But this is very constructive, and the thought that we might continue well into 2025. If you watched my last video, I posed that S&P would probably do some backing and filling, but I was wrong, and that is the nature of making videos. When you make prediction videos, there's just more ways to be wrong than there are ways to be right. And S&P 500 is now at all-time highs, and we're going to go into this a little bit in the video, but this should continue. And I don't have the information presently available right now, but as you guys know, I watch Fundstrat's research quite a bit, and they expect this trend to continue into mid-October. And when we look at um, cycles, when we look at breadth, when we look at MACD, when we look at stocks above their 200-day moving averages, this trend should continue into around mid-October before we get any sort of consolidation. Again, these predictions tend to just be wrong, but I think that this trend could continue before some consolidation into the election. Once that is firm and we know who the president's going to be, I think markets will then gap up again once that certainty is in place. Again, in my last video, I said, it's time to be buying Bitcoin in September, not getting bearish on Bitcoin in September. And that has played out. And you can see now that MSTR is it's ripping on the ARB cloud. We are probably a little bit overheated here. But I want to go into this idea of MSTR, and we'll get to Tesla later, but MSTR being a trade that we only see every decade. And again, for many of us, we were accumulating down here in 2023, and the stock has been completely repriced in this Bitcoin cycle. Um, our original bull targets were about here at $1,200, and here we are at $1,700, and we're only halfway through this Bitcoin cycle. And I think I'll preface this by thinking that 225 and 258, I think, are completely possible and achievable by end of year. We are getting some sell signals on Bitcoin on the IDSS model, um, but I don't think that I'm too concerned about it given October is very strong. I think what we need to glean from this chart is we've made higher highs, we've made higher lows. So this would just advocate for possibly this scenario where there is some consolidation. But I want to share you some information I've been reading on X. Um, to kind of give you this hypothesis of MSTR being a trade of the decade. And when we look at Bitcoin Q4 average returns, and which you guys are aware of this, median returns are 57% and average returns are 88%. And obviously, October, I like the median, has an average return of 27%. So we should see, if history repeats, a very strong Q4. And one of the things that I think has been on my mind quite a bit is this divergence between Bitcoin and the S&P 500. And we're currently still in that where the S&P 500 is making all-time highs, but Bitcoin is going down. When we see circuit or situations where this happens or examples of when this happens, you can see that every single time the next move is for Bitcoin to go higher. And I think we are running out of time, and I think it will be in the next 30 to 60 days where we see Bitcoin catch up. You can see now that MSTR is up to $34 billion at a new all-time high for market cap. And we have new catalysts on the horizon when they do adopt FASB, which should be at the end of Q1 2025, where they might have a FASB gain of close or above $9 billion, which just blows my mind. And Ben here believes that this could constitute up to $45 of gain per share, which is just insane. I'm not entirely sure what that means for the stock price, but once they do adopt FASB, it will send the stock flying. And another thing to note is MSTR is only up 67% on their Bitcoin holdings, and you can see what it's done for the stock. So when we think about 2024 to 2028, this is almost the time where it would be the super cycle. That's when MSTR is up 100, 200, 400, 500% on their Bitcoin investment. So 2020 to 2024 has just been really an accumulation cycle for MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor. And 2024, 2028 could be where MSTR even goes further parabolic. And when I talk about MSTR being the trade of the decade, let's just start in the next 3 months. Some of us have been buying now. We've been buying in the low and 30s. If you're lucky and you've been a part of the community, we've been buying in the 200s and the 300s pre-split. But let's go back here to Bitcoin monthly returns. If we do get what usually happens for Bitcoin in Q4, let's hypothetically say we hit 100K by the end of the year. And this chart has been really useful for me to track MSTR's price. And for those listening, I really want you to hear this. If your price target for Bitcoin is 100K, which if I do the math really quickly, I should have done this prior, but if I do the math really quickly here, if Bitcoin hits 100K, that's about 53% upside from here, which does line up with Q4 median returns. So if we hit 100K by the end of the year, which is right here, and if NAV premium remains the same as it is today, which this chart would suggest that NAV actually expands, but let's just pretend NAV stays the same. MSTR doesn't do more dilution or more offerings, which we're actually hoping that they do, but all else stays the same. If NAV remains at 2.16, if we hit 100K, MSTR will be $269 per share. And that's not a guess, that is a statement. in terms of if NAV stays the same, if we hit 100K Bitcoin, MSTR likely trades at $270. Now, and I've seen a lot of people think that it's possible we hit 120K. And in that situation, we would be going up to $320 per share. Okay. Now, if NAV expands, there's obviously these crazy bull targets, which I don't really spend much time calculating because I don't know if I want to focus my energy here. But that's when, you could see a $300 to $400 MSTR. But I think it's worth thinking about, okay, what happens if the Bitcoin cycle continues into Q2, Q3 2025, and 150K plus Bitcoin happens? I absolutely believe MSTR could be in the $300 to $400 range, but it might be too early to tell. I might be too bullish myself, but that's why I have been advocating for um, people to buy MicroStrategy, for people to buy Bitcoin in September. And that initial video has already kind of come true. So could we see some consolidation here? Absolutely. But I think the previous video I made, I was almost begging people buy Bitcoin in September and watch what happens in October. And if you aren't satisfied, cut the trade. But historically speaking, Bitcoin or October is Bitcoin's strongest month, and it's not even close. And you can watch my previous video if you want an explanation there. According to Marty, we could see some consolidation in October and then blast off in November. I think, and this is just a Wyckoff accumulation, I think this is possible just because September ended up being strong when it was supposed to be weak. So possibly October defies expectation. We know Bitcoin tends to not do what we think it's going to do. And let's hop back into TradingView here. When we look back into TradingView, again, if you're buying calls at MSTR here and we're going to, let's say, 300, the upside has just been enormous. We're talking 150 to 200% gains within a period of a couple months. And if Bitcoin continues into 2025 and it does hit 180K, 190K, could we see $400 to $500 MSTR? That's something that I haven't wrapped my mind around. Um, but options for MSTR are vastly overpriced right now. So I would encourage those looking to get some MSTR, possibly look at just adding shares. Okay. That's what I would do in this situation. Try to buy over low on the ARB cloud, as right now we are very overvalued. And you can see other situations where we've been overvalued for MSTR. We eventually return back to cloud. So that would be the trade of the decade. It's MSTR over the next 6 months, but it's also thinking about, well, how high could MSTR go in a 2024 to 2028 cycle? And I'm not sure yet. It's too early to tell. We don't know if the 4-year cycle is going to continue if we do get the perpetual bid. And I want to wrap this video up with the second trade of the decade, and that's Tesla. You can see here, we ended the day at 260 on Friday, which it is previous resistance around 265, and we rejected last time. But I think we need to prepare for the situation that the robotaxi event exceeds expectations and earnings exceeds expectations. Because as you know, Tesla stock has not really gone anywhere. But the technical structure of Tesla would actually point towards going higher. And I think if we can exceed 272, I think James put out a video that Tesla could hit 400 in 2024 this year. I think it's still on the table. And I think the last quarter for Tesla could be parabolic. When we look at Tesla again, we have some resistance here at 256, 257. We're above it. We closed above it, which is good news. We have some short-term um, trend lines to break. But when we look at Tesla, you can see we are at a huge multi-year trend line from here. Now, I know some people like to use this trend line, but I think if we look at the overarching trend from 2021, we are right back at it. And this consolidation has taken over 1,000 days. And that's something I need keep in the back of your mind as we go into the next slide. Um, but I think it's time. I think we are pretty close. And let's say we go back down here, we could still accumulate in the 220s. But we have to be prepared for the situation that it is time to break the multi-year downtrend. When we look at Nvidia in 2021, 2022, you could see it witnessed a very similar structure as Tesla, where there was a multi-year downtrend, and once it broke, the the technical structure and the price it went vertical. And this was only a 424-day consult downward trend, while Tesla's has been over 1,000 days, which would typically point to, if you've done much technical analysis on stocks, to a huge upward price breakout. The longer stocks consolidate for, typically the breakout is of equal size. The longer the consolidation, the bigger the breakout. And you can see, this looks like such a big chart now, but when we zoom out and we look at that period, Nvidia has, we don't even remember this time for Nvidia. And I just want to remind people that Tesla right now is in the same spot. And I think people have kind of forgotten about this Nvidia comparison where obviously Nvidia had a huge repricing. It was right here when the earnings, I don't remember what it was, but it was multiples above what Wall Street was expecting, and it set Nvidia on the catalyst or on the stock trajectory that it is today. And I think we should have that bias with Tesla because if you believe in robotaxi, I don't even think about Optimus, but if you believe in robotaxi, I think that Tesla is on track for a very similar trajectory. And we will look back at Tesla under $300 as why didn't I buy more? And I want to conclude this video with Tesla on the monthly chart. And you can see that this is the best monthly candle on Tesla from a exceeding the technical structure, from exceeding the trend line. It's not the highest. We had a higher one in July, it looks like. In fact, I would need to look at it a little bit closer. Um, but this is the best monthly candle we've seen since 2021. And we obviously have, I think, 2 more trading days in September. But it looks like on a monthly perspective, we've already broke this multi-year downtrend. And I think the stock is set to go higher. So maybe you missed the boat on MSTR. Maybe Tesla is your focus now. I wouldn't be buying option leaps, so they're cost about $10,000. Your break even would be $360 for Tesla stock, which is pretty high. I think your ROI is better just buying shares. But I want to encourage people to have a long-term mindset here. And I think Tesla under $300 will one day look cheap. I wish I could buy Nvidia under $300 pre-split or under $30 today. And I think Tesla is being set up for a very similar trajectory. And because of the technical structure of the charts, I am leaning bullish and positive for the robotaxi event and for earnings. I think they're going to surprise. So, in summary, I'm very bullish on MSTR, very bullish on Tesla. I think we have a very big parabolic run incoming over the next 6 months. I'm super excited. Uh, and I'll be looking, I know people know I hate on miners a little bit. I'm looking to add some miner positions here for the next few weeks because they probably present the highest ROI, but they are a bit risky over the next 6 months. So Clean Spark options and leaps look a little bit cheaper right now, still expensive. And maybe I'll go into a miner video next time. So hope this video was helpful. Please let me know if you enjoyed it. Talk to you soon.